Okay, perfect. I hope you all can hear me. I'm going to get the other live stream on and we will be ready to go. Hello, tribe. Good to see you. Thank you for your patience. We're all learning how to connect through all of these different channels. So I see you in YouTube, Soul Tribe, family. Good to see you. I see you in Instagram. Good to see you. And it's a great joy to be with you. All know today is a day of the goddess. It is a day celebrating the significant contribution continued. And that, okay, hold on. I'm gonna check and make sure I have, okay, do I have a good connection? Everybody hear me? Hearing loud? Okay, beautiful. So we're here today to celebrate that tradition. And there's a number of different ways that we will be celebrating the divine feminine within ourselves and within the world and all of humanity. So we are going to begin by, where is my lighter? As a divine woman and gave the world so much love. And as you all know, I'm sure whether it's Guadalupe or Fatima, she has came into the world throughout the night for recent viewings of Mother Mary, even the ones in 1968 and in early 2000s in Egypt. It was always the same story. This being of loving people, silently walking among, vibrating with this luminous love. We are here to honor that because it is so. Divine Mother Mary, we call upon you today and always to be with us, walk with us. Allow the power of your beautiful heart to beat with us. Free from judgment, free from classification. Warm, opening mothers, arms, accepting, loving, one with the great mother within and above. May she vibrate within our minds, our thoughts, our emotions, our hearts, our souls, all of our being. May Mother Earth vibrate with the divine love of Mother Mary within all our hearts and beyond. Amen. And so it is. So that was our little prayer, as well as Mary the Mother and Mary the Wife, the Magdalene. After this, I'm always open to discussing all of this and more with everyone. So our first teaching is actually going to be it comes from the Mani library. Just to give you a little bit of background, it was 13 ancient books that were discovered in Upper Egypt in 1945. And language, when they were transitioning from ancient Egyptian to Arabic, they spoke Coptic. So there's a lot of texts that are both Coptic and ancient Egyptian. So they're kind of like a Rosetta Stone in that time period. So when they were translated, they shook the world because the concepts that they introduced were so loving and transcendental. And they called for a complete reevaluation in the way that the world looked at early Christianity, because these texts were a reteaching of what early Christians thought, or at least a sector of them, and a large sector of them. So they're very beautiful. So let's get started. Pistis Sophia. So the Pistis Sophia, as it starts in chapter 1, it was 11 years that it was said, and instead of saying Jesus, I'm going to say Yahshua. because Joshua is actually his Amharic pronunciation. So when they spoke his name, when he was alive, that's how they pronounced it. So we know from how they pronounce Hebrew. So that being said, 11 years after Yeshua resurrected, he came back in these texts and he continued teaching very esoteric and divine truths about the universe. And they're quite profound when you read them. And who were these disciples he was teaching? Well, yes, they were the traditional male disciples that we know of. And there was also 7 female disciples. One of them being Mary Magdalene, which was his closest disciple, the disciple of all disciples. So basically, as he was teaching these profound wisdoms, it dealt with the first commandment. As we know, it's thou shalt not kill. So traditionally, we see thou shalt not kill as a do unto others as you would have them do, which is true on the exoteric level, the base level. That is a good way to live beyond all religions. Just moral level, don't kill people. That's nice. What he was teaching in these 11 years was the veil within this commandment. So what is the veil within this commandment? Well, the veil is the deeper, esoteric, the hidden meaning of what this means. And the hidden meaning deals with how that influences the reincarnation of our soul and our soul's path out of reincarnation. So he got a lot deeper into it within these texts of the Pistis Sophia. So it was said that the wisdom was the Father in the form of a dove. So what does a dove represent? As we all know, I know you all are probably very familiar with, the dove is the Magdalene. The dove is the divine Mother Mary. The dove is the divine feminine principle, also called the divine Sophia, which is in this text the divine healing energy and wisdom of God, which is feminine. Feminine in vibration, both masculine and female. It is, which it is, but also the totality of everything. So not necessarily a anthropomorphic being, a energy force that pervades everything. So let's go deeper into the Pistis Sophia. Yeshua, Jesus, says in the Pistis Sophia, I am come forth out of the first mystery, which is the last mystery. Now, a lot of these texts are alchemical, which means they're metaphoric. So they have metaphors that veil the deeper meaning. The first mystery is the first commandment. When he says, I come forth out of the first mystery, it means that there is a deeper, he comes forth from that deeper esoteric vibration to shed light on it. And then it says next in the Pistis Sophia, the disciples did not know way within the mystery universe. So they did not know the way, which means they did not know the wisdom of the first mystery that Jesus was speaking about. But they thought that that mystery was the head of the universe and the completion of all completions. Why did they think this? Well, they thought this, as it says in the Pistis Sophia. So I'm going to be quoting the Pistis Sophia, and then I'm going to be decoding it for us. So we're going to go back and forth between speaking the actual text and also decoding the text. So the text, Yeshua said, it surrounds the great light, the whole treasury of light. So he's talking about the first mystery. And then he goes on to say that Jesus had not told them about, so it goes into a big dispersion about the mystery of this great light that Jesus is speaking about, that the disciples are trying to understand, but they don't because it's very profound. So it more or less lists all the things that they were trying to understand and that we're all working and involving in. So it said, Jesus had not told them, the disciples, what guard is at each gateway of the treasury of light. So we have to pause that. So if any of you all are familiar with alchemy, which I know a lot of you are, and if any of you are familiar with chakras, when they talk about gateways of light, that's what a chakra means. A chakra is a word, and when you translate it, it's a Vedic word. And if you translate the meaning of the word, it is a spinning wheel and a gateway of light. Your chakra systems, they are concentrations of electromagnetic energy that flows through your body. And as this energy gets concentrated, the wheels spin in correlation with each other, which when it says what guard is at each gateway of light. So it's taught in the Kabbalah. So a lot of these esoteric teachings descend from the Essenes. The Essenes, the Chaldeans, they also are intertwined with the wisdom of the alchemical text and also the Chaldeans. So you'll see a golden thread of common things as we move through this text. So, the guard, as you all know, I'm sure, within our chakras, we store traumas, we store painful memories, and that creates a disharmony. So, what is at the gate, what is the guard, is literally our inner demons. So, that's what this is in essence saying and explaining to the disciples. This is the higher wisdom. It said he had not. So this once again relates to sacred geometry and how on an atomic level the universe creates elements and life through elements. So as you study whether it's quantum physics or even just the building blocks of the atomic structure, and also in essence, this is what the alchemists were saying is there is a way that electromagnetic energy, which is the great light that pervades everything, there is a way that it expands and recreates itself on a atomic level. And that's also, and it's heavily entwined with sacred geometry, because sacred geometry is the reflection, the mathematical proportions of all of life, from an atomic level all the way up to the way that galaxies spiral and interconnect with each other. So it is the supreme math of the universe. So this is what he explained. So and then it goes further on to say, but he had discoursed with them in a general manner, teaching them of the existence of these things. So, as we just said, we just shed a brief light on what these profound teachings are saying. So, metaphorically, the Pistis Sophia is explaining what Jesus was trying to introduce, but it is celestial knowledge, it is quantum knowledge. And so, for many people nowadays, especially even back in the days, it is a lot for our minds to grasp, but also possible. And when we do, how divine it is. So, further on, it says he did not tell them about the house of the Saphirs. So, for those of you that are familiar, once again, with alchemy, the houses of Saphirs and their transitions is the 26,000 great year cycle of our sun through the universe, which goes into an even greater cosmic year cycle. So, that's what that was speaking about. So he did talk about the great 26,000 year cycle, which is quite amazing because that is yet again so many different ancient traditions talking about this divine rebirth that we are in the year and now, age of the Aquarius. Still a little more time to go, but we're entering into it. We're stepping our toes into it, or we're dancing slightly, I should say. So that is chapter 1, just a brief overview. Then you move into chapter 2. Chapter 2, it starts to get very interesting because in chapter 2, they're at this place called Mount Olives, which I have been to. This is a very profound spot where, for those of you who are familiar, before Jesus was crucified, this is the spot where Mary Magdalene anointed him. In the anointing scene, this is why they call her the lady with the alabaster jar. So traditionally, the high priestesses of Isis in that time frame in Egypt all had a alabaster jar of anointing, and it was part of a ritual of rebirth of light within that was connected to the Isis and Osiris mysteries of rebirthing your chakra system and your inner light, your light body. So she had this alabaster jar and she anointed Jesus, and the disciples were upset because, as you know, in the actual accepted text of the Bible, they say, the oil was worth a month's salary. So that also shows us how significant what she was doing was, and also how precious that oil was, and the fact that she had it, the significance of it. So there's many different lights of wisdom throughout even the accepted text of the Bible, that when we have eyes to see it, we can understand the greater mysteries and wisdom of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Mary his mother, and the whole circle, and their true light that they wanted to give the world, which is quite beautiful and aligns with a lot of the teachings of the rainbow light body of the Tibetans, as well as the golden light body of the ancient Egyptians. So all paths lead back to love of light. So into the last mystery in chapter 2. So the last mystery is called from within, from without, which, as all of you know, alchemy, once again, as above, so below, which is a very common alchemical thing that you will hear. And what it means inherently is everything is reflecting each other in a symphony of synchronization. So after this, and then as it says, so on Mount Olives, all of the disciples were sitting, and they were saying, "We are blessed among men. We are the highest, for we have received the profound wisdom of the entire universe." And they were kind of, in the Pistis Sophia, it seems as though they were gloating about that. And in the Pistis Sophia, you see it says, after Jesus heard this, Yeshua heard this, he was sitting aside from them, and a great light power came from within him. The light power came down and surrounded Jesus as he sat away from the disciples. That is the direct words from the Pistis Sophia. And the disciples did not see Jesus because of this great light, for their eyes were darkened. They could only see the great light. That is the direct quote from the Pistis Sophia. So what does that mean? Well, as a lot of you probably have known from my different teachings and our talks and our readings together about the light body traditions of all of these various cultures, that is the profound light body. So the light shot forth many rays. From below upward, one great light came forth, connecting all of heaven to all of earth. When the disciples saw this great light, they were afraid. And so what does all of that mean now? Well, many things. As you all know, there is a very profound light body teaching that prescinds all these different cultures. And going to the Tibetan Buddhist, it was in 1998, the last Tibetan monk that actually achieved his rainbow light body in front of a group of many hundreds of people. One of them was actually a Franciscan monk, and he witnessed it. And the thing of this is they describe that same heavenly light descending that is so bright, it's like a sun upon earth, and the body is transformed. And so many people can't even look at it because it is physically so bright. So what this text is actually describing is the transformation of the light body. And we hear this same transformation echoed in these texts, the alchemical texts, the traditions of ancient Egypt, the Tibetans, the Chaldeans, the list goes on and on. So as we hear it and as we experience it also within our own meditations, we are able to ground in a more profound understanding of what this actually means and how to integrate it into our life. So let's see what time it is. All right. That is the Pistis Sophia. And it goes, there is another chapter that goes a little bit deeper. There is a chapter 3. Oh, yes. And this one deals a lot with ascension. So as we all know, when the Tibetan monks have achieved this rainbow light body, what happens? They literally ascend to a higher dimension. This is connected with the electromagnetic field, and also on an atomic level, the actual atoms changing from a carbon-based structure to a more silicone-based structure, actually being lighter in energy. So as profound and otherworldly as it sounds, over 160,000 monks, as well as people that have studied with the monks, have achieved their rainbow light body in Tibet. And these are documented cases where many people have seen them, so many that it was impossible to deny. So that just shows that it is definitely something that is accessible. And the reason Yeshua was talking about the 26,000 year cycle within the Pistis Sophia in these texts is because during the 26,000 year cycle, we are aligned with the central sun of our universe, which is a massive sun, 1,000,000 times bigger than our sun. And when we align with that great central sun, it actually empowers our sun. So our sun starts creating creating corneal masses of solar storms, which they've been seeing for a number of years. And they've been, many scientists have been like, okay, what's going on? Because we're seeing, there's always solar storms, but if you look at it, we're seeing it increase every decade and more and more and more. And also the frequency and the amount of solar storms, which also, once again, affects the DNA. So lots of good things spinning within and around us. So to conclude our light of love, we go to chapter 3 of the Pistis Sophia. So in Pistis Sophia, it says on the 15th day of the moon, Yeshua ascended on a great ray of light to heaven. So the reason it's talking about the 15th day of the moon is this also has to do with alignments and how alignments, can I guess you could say support the soul in our ascension, because that goes into the alchemical ideology of as above, so below. So it's not as though the universe or the signs are chasing you to dominate you. It's as though the universe is definitely singing for you and supporting you. So as you heal and ascend, you align with the universe. And during these strategic alignments, it creates a bridge for you as you create a bridge from within. So if you go into the Vedic Hindus and once again the Tibetan Buddhists and the Sufis and all these different traditions, the ancient Egyptians, during strategic alignments, they do meditation as a way of expanding the portals of light within them. So that's what this is dealing with, and also his second ascension on a great way of life. So then it moves into chapter 4, and it says, there's more talk in chapter 3, but it's mainly of his ascension. And so it's just describing that ascension and that process in many different beautiful and amazing words. As you go into chapter 4, it says the disciples were afraid because there was a great earthquake. And they wept and they said, Yeshua, descend again, please, in a great light. Come and comfort us, protect us. So he did. And it was a light of, quote unquote, threefold light. So we pause there. And why do we pause there? What does threefold light mean? Well, for you that are familiar with alchemical teachings, threefold light is the light of the supernal sun within. So it's also represented in your Hatha line. Your Hatha line connects a series of central chakras that run from your feet up into central parts. And these parts, when fully connected, help to shine a light on other areas that need connection, I guess you could say. So the threefold light is, in essence, wisdom that is of the soul, that is of the spirit, and then that is also of the mental plane. So mind, body, soul. So a 360 of wisdom. As light is wisdom, it is consciousness. As we go further into the Pestin Sophia, it says, it came to pass that the disciples saw the light and feared the light. And they were starting to tremble because, once again, they couldn't see Jesus. As it said, their eyes were darkened. They just saw this bright light and they were confused. So he said, take courage. It is me. Don't be afraid. To this side, of course, the disciples rejoiced, and they once again became at peace with what was going on. So there's much more as we go further into the Pestin Sophia, but as you notice, there is this reoccurring theme of chakras, inner knowledge, the transcendence of fear, and also this inner esoteric knowledge that can be accessed, and this inner light that is within all of us, and is for us to have the courage to activate it. So that is a brief, very brief, because there is a lot more to it, of the Pestin Sophia. That being said, let's move into the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. So the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is probably one of my favorite texts. There's just so much to it. So when you start with the worldview of the text, it's basically explaining the ascent of the soul through the material realm. And that is quite divine, because the only other time we hear of that are within these esoteric teachings traditionally of Tibet and ancient Egypt. It's very rare that we see this in Christianity. So as we read further into these texts, if you're familiar with the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism or alchemy or ancient Egypt, you will see the same common profound themes. And it really brings a circle of knowledge home that is very beautiful for the heart and the soul. It feels good. So, in the gospel, Mary is represented as the bearer of a secret knowledge that was only told to her. So, so much of the gospel is only half. A lot of it was destroyed. A lot of it was fought over. This was heavily suppressed for many, many centuries. So the chapters 1 and 3 are lost. and it begins in chapter 4. It begins with Mary saying to Jesus, "Will matter be destroyed?" And Yeshua answers, I'm going to interchange with Jesus and Yeshua just so it gets everyone familiar. All matter exists as one. All nature will return into itself. For the nature of matter resolves to the root of its own nature alone. Interesting, right? So once again, this is an echoing of so many alchemical teachings. And after that, Jesus says, "He who has ears to hear, let them hear," which is directly a saying of alchemy. And yet this was actually written before what we know as modern day alchemy. And then it says, Peter, "Mary, since you have," he says to Jesus, because mind you, Jesus is talking. He's ascended and came back, and he's talking to Mary and all of his disciples in the Gospel of Mary. So that's one groundwork. In the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, this is after he's ascended and he came back to teach even deeper knowledge to Mary and the disciples. So now Peter says, "Jesus, since you have explained everything to us, what is the sin of the world?" What's the sin of the world? Just tell me now. And Jesus says, and I find this very interesting, there is no sin. There is no sin. He says, "But it is you that create sin when you do the things that are of a lower nature, that aren't truly you. That is why you become sick and die." So that goes back to alchemy. And in alchemy, it teaches that the reason we are on this cycle of reincarnation is our soul is learning so many layers of wisdom and love. Wisdom for others, love for ourselves, just so many layers of what we truly are. And when we do, we transcend. So, it goes further. And it says, "Peace be with you." Jesus is saying this. "Receive my peace into yourself, for the Son of Man is within you." And now he says, "Go, preach the wisdom of earth. Do not give law to the land unless you give it to yourself. Live in the light of wisdom, beyond judgment." So the disciples start weeping and they say, How do we teach the Gentiles after they killed you? How are we going to do this? They didn't spare you. How are we to be spared? And this is very profound because Mary stands up at this point and she says, "Do not weep or grieve, for his grace will be with you. He will protect you. But let us praise him, for he has prepared us to rise in the full light of God." When she said this, the gospel of the true light, the disciples' hearts turned to good, or their hearts turned to good. Peter says, "Tell us, Mary, the secret knowledge that Yeshua taught you." And this is where the Gospel of Mary starts to get very, very interesting. She says, "I will tell you the secret knowledge that is hidden from you. I saw Jesus in a vision. Jesus said, 'Blessed are you, Mary, that you did not waver at the sight of my light.'" So remember, once again, when Jesus is in his light body, all the other disciples, they cannot see him. They just see a bright, blinding light they're terrified of. Mary, however, is the only disciple that is able to actually look upon him, which means that her third eye is activated. She has the third vision. She's able to see and integrate the light. So then she says, Jesus, how does he who sees the vision see it? Through the soul or through the spirit? And this is interesting. So Jesus says he does not see it through the soul, nor through the spirit, but through the mind that is centered between the two. So as you all are familiar, Jesus also said, if thy eye is single, thy whole body shall be filled with light. So what is the mind that is centered between the two? I wish you all could talk. You all know where I'm going with this. The mind that is centered between the two is your third eye. So when you are centered, that is the third vision of sight that allows you to see the inner light. Many of you that have attended the sound baths, a number of you, and the light body activations have actually experienced it for yourself. And as I experienced all of these things, about 5 years into doing Tibetan Dzogchen meditation, I also experienced this profound, heavenly, blissful light during meditation. And although I had read about it in all of these texts, I just did not understand that it was me that was experiencing it. And it wasn't until in Nepal I was training with a Tibetan monk and doing many Tibetan rites of meditation. And I asked him, have you seen this bright, beautiful light during meditation? And he was very happy and started telling everyone, yes, this is the 10,000 petal lotus. This 10,000 petal lotus, as they call it. So yes, it is that inner awakening of the third vision within you. If you go to science, your third eye, pineal gland, produces dimethyltryptamine. And when they have given dimethyltryptamine to people, they also experience this same profound inner light. Such as your pineal gland secretes increased amounts of DMT, dimethyltryptamine, when you die and when you're born. And when you experience this profound light during meditation, it is the same as a death experience, the supernal light, the heavenly light that everyone talks about that have near-death experiences. So that's a little window and background into the magic of the two becoming one, as they say in alchemy. So as we go further into it, the next pages are missing from the manuscript, which is very interesting because I wonder what those pages are saying. Because it begins with, and this is very interesting, a codex. And it says, and Desire said, I do not see you descending, but now I see you ascending. Why do you lie, since you belong to me? The soul answered and said, I saw you. You did not see me, nor recognize me. I served you as a garment, and you did not know me. When it said this, the soul went away rejoicing greatly. Again, it came to the third power, which is called ignorance. The power questions the soul, saying, where are you going? In wickedness are you bound? In wickedness are you bound? But you are not bound. Do not judge. And the soul said, why do you judge me? Although I have not judged. I was bound, though I have not bound. I was not recognized, but I have recognized that the all is being dissolved, both earthly things and heavenly. When the soul had overcome the third power, it went upwards, saw the fourth power, which took 7 forms. The first form is darkness. The second form, desire. The third form, ignorance. The fourth form, excitement of death. The fifth form, the kingdom of flesh. And so then we need to pause there, because if you're familiar with alchemy, a lot of things are starting to ring a bell as far as the powers and the gates. If you've read the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, these teachings and even the words and the vernacular as far as the spheres and the powers and the soul moving beyond these spheres, it's all very similar vernacular. So all of these powers that they're talking about are within and also above. As above, so below. And basically, as you move beyond these inner things, it allows the light body to integrate, which allows the soul to move beyond the cycle of reincarnation. So that's what it's speaking about. So it says the sixth is the foolishness of flesh, and the seventh is wrathful wisdom. And so it says these are the 7 powers. They ask the soul, whence do you come, slayer of men? Or where are you going, conqueror of space? Now think about that. If you really read into what this is saying, it is literally talking about the same things that the Emerald Tablet of Thoth and the alchemists were saying, is the path of the ascent of the soul beyond the heavenly spheres, beyond the cycle, and beyond all of these lower energies that we experience on a reincarnation level, and also within our life here. Because what we do is reflected in all of our lives. The past, the present, and the future merge in these teachings. So it is a profound vehicle that if we truly understand what they're saying, we can integrate and alchemize the wisdom. And when we do that, we can transcend into our true self. So further into the Gospel of Mary, it says, the soul answered. So this is after it says, where are you going, conqueror of space? These are the 7 spheres, or wraths of power. The soul answered and said, what binds me has been slain, and what turns me about has been overcome. And my desire has ended, and my ignorance has died. In an eon I was released from a world, and in a type from a type and a form and a fetter of oblivion, which I transcend. From this time on, I will attain to the rest of time, of the season of the aeon in silence. And then it says, when Mary had said this, she fell silent, since it was to this point that Jesus had spoken to her. Now, if you notice, a lot of the texts were missing. And when they resumed, it got very deep into esoteric knowledge. And that was all the gospel of Mary Magdalene, her words. She's teaching of her journey beyond, her ascension. So Mary Magdalene achieved the integration of her light body while living and taught the teachings of the light body to thousands of people. Her teachings then became the ancient Cathars and the ancient Gnostics. So as it goes further now, after she has spoken, the disciples all start to argue and say, did Jesus really say this? This is way out there, Mary. I don't know, in essence, of course, not in these words, but that's what it means. And there's even texts where they're saying, why would he say this? Like, would he prefer a woman over us? Like, why her? And you get to see kind of like the beginning of the shift in Christianity from a religion that has a place for the divinity of women within earth and within ourselves and also within God, to a church that's totally a male God with no real female divination other than a earthly mother that is a virgin. So all of this is contradictory to what Mary taught. Mary taught that Jesus was indeed a living person, was a son of Mary and her husband, and that at a certain point he achieved his light body. And then that is when he became the Christ and began integrating these profound wisdoms, which, if you go further down the rabbit hole, in the Bible itself, when Jesus is physically healing people with his hands, which is what's taught in Reiki, the highest levels of Reiki, that is said to be a true fact. People are blown away, and he looks at them and he says, all of this you can do and more. And that always resonated with me because that's so mystical and profound. And that's not saying that God is outside of us. That is saying that the kingdom of God is within us. And if you get further into it, it is known that Mary Magdalene and all of these other women actually helped to, pay money to help fund. That's the word. They funded Jesus. So in traditional Christianity, it is widely accepted that Mary and a number of the disciples' wives funded Jesus's what they were doing. And so you can think about all of these different families traveling around teaching these beautiful wisdoms and how much money that cost. So where does a woman in that time and frame get this amount of money, these profound wisdoms? A priestess of Isis is a woman that has this profound wisdom, this accessibility, and the funds to say, yes, let's bring heaven to earth, literally. So within the Gospel of Mary, we have these very profound teachings of what is above and within us. And as we integrate these teachings, it really is a coming home of the soul. So that being said, let's lay back and make ourselves comfortable and just begin integrating this light with a nice meditation. Oh, beautiful Mother Mary Spirit, Divine Magdalene, Christ Consciousness, Yeshua, you are within us. You are above us. You are below us. You are the light of love, and we dance in your wisdom. We call in the light of our true self. And we integrate this light with love. We are light. We are love. We are the dance Release all lower energies. Take a deep breath and allow yourself to rise in the light of your true soul. Breathe deeply the light of your soul. Allow every level of light to integrate and spiral into you and through you. 7 rays of love, 7 rays of light, taking flight. We are love. May the loving energy of the Divine Magdalene live within us and all of humanity. May the light of the sacred Christ consciousness illuminate our life and the lives of all humanity, rising as one, ascending on the wings of a dove. We are light, we are love, we are one beautiful rising, and we allow all lower energies to fall at our feet, transcending all pain, all negative paradigms, all lower vibrations, energies, and dancing in the full illumination of our true self. We are love. Thank you all for your light. Thank you for expanding and for honoring the sacred Magdalene. For so many centuries, her loving wisdom has been brutally oppressed. And as you anchor in this wisdom and allow it to swim into you and through your heart and your mind, for she is free. She is a very real part of you and me. And we ascend together. As she rises, you rise. We are of the Divine Magdalene. Be with us here and now. May the love of the sacred illumination of the Magdalene heart be within all minds, hearts, bodies, and souls, rising as a dove of love within Mother Earth and beyond, healing us all with the energy of the Great Mother. And so it is. Amen. Our next activation will be at 9:09, and that will be more integration. So we'll be laying back, enjoying some divination work, and working with all of this meditation and letting the wisdom flow through us. So feel free to make yourselves comfy. Love you all. See you soon.